Shaitan, he makes a useful person useless. The attitude of complaint is from Shaitan. Yeah. Muslims statistics show that Muslims contribute 31 billion to the UK economy.
And they will realize that this person is just like me. They have the same daily worries as me. They haven't got some big mega plan going on of taking over society and, making us some kind of slaves or concubines or something crazy like that.
A bunch of them. If you take a bunch of these twigs, yeah, put them all together and you try snapping them. I'm trying my best, right? I can't break them.
Bismillah walhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to this episode of the Social Dilemma podcast. Now, the last few weeks for Muslims in the UK have been interesting to say the least. Muslims in the UK and worldwide will know the protests that took place in the UK and what then very quickly actually turned into riots. And these have been testing times for Muslims. Muslims felt vulnerable, they felt scared, especially women and children. They also felt anger and confused that why is this happening? And so inshallah, the focus of today's discussion is to dissect what we have just seen take place. Try to understand that why did this happen? What lessons can we learn from this? And what things can we do going forward to ensure that something like this does not happen again? Because we know that if you don't learn the lessons from history, then it's bound to repeat itself. So, Mufti Sab, you are well aware of the riots that have been going on, and it's been all over the news, really plastered all over the news. I think the place to start is for us to discuss, right, and really get to the root of it, that what were some of the root causes of this anger, this eruption of anger which took place?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah. So the first thing that comes to mind in regards to this is the Southport killings that obviously took place. Yeah. And on the back of that, the misinformation that a Muslim was the transgressor in this. So why was it that the public opinion was that it was a Muslim? Yeah. Obviously, that some people had mischievously spread that it may be Muslim and whatever else, the rumors that had spread about it. But the point here is to understand that why was it so easy to accept for the public, mass public, to accept that, yeah, it probably was a Muslim. Yeah. So it's simply because of the years now we see, so many years of built up propaganda against Muslims, the Islamophobia that is in essence on the rise. And we see that despite us trying our best to fight against Islamophobia, it's still on the rise and it's still carrying on, doing this kind of thing that we see today. So we see that the media propaganda and obviously, unfortunately, the politicians have also jumped on the bandwagon where in order to gain votes from public and also to gain position, power, they're in essence saying certain remarks, comments, which may put them, in the green, they may not be able to be prosecuted or whatever else, right? And some of them obviously are held accountable, but sometimes they're very cleverly playing with words, but they know well what they're doing. Yeah. They are, in essence, what they're doing is putting vulnerable people, like you talked about, women and children, at risk, innocent people who have done nothing but serve the country, contribute to the society over here to make it a better place, and putting people like this at risk. Yeah. That's what they're doing. So they are, in essence, alienating such a big community of people, so many people. And obviously, people will feel aggrieved because they are victimized, or they are being, in this way, treated in a way whereby they shouldn't be treated. So obviously, we Muslims, there's this Islamophobia constantly. And because of Muslims are put in the media as though they are the aggressors, what happens is whenever something goes wrong, immediate reaction of public is that it must be a Muslim that's done it. You hear of a title, or you hear breaking news, there's been a terrorist attack in somewhere in city, wherever else, right? Immediate reaction, even for a Muslim, think about it, right? Even Muslims listening, the immediate reaction would be, I hope it's not a Muslim. That's what a Muslim would be thinking.
Yeah.
But why is it that that is happening? Why is it that that thought comes into mind? Why not somebody else of some other faith, or some, not even a faith, somebody else from a certain other background, that it's somebody from here? Why not that? Why is it that it's Muslims? It's because of this. You have to think about it. Because of this constant barrage, of the propaganda being presented in this way.
Yeah, definitely. And I think even in popular culture as well, you think about movies, and it's always a Muslim guy who's being portrayed, as the terrorist and as the instigator, and is the white guy coming along and saving everybody, right? So even in popular culture, this is what you have. And you were mentioning, politicians, and there's just so many things we can quote, right? So you have, for example, the former Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, where she claimed that Islamists and extremists and that anti-Semites were in charge of Britain, right? And clear you have a reference to the Muslims here. And then you had one of the previous prime ministers, arguably disgraced prime minister now, right? Ex-prime minister Liz Truss, where she took part in an interview with somebody called Steve Bannon. And he actually, in his interview with her, he actually called Toby Robinson a hero. And Toby Robinson is one of the instigators of this riot. So you can see the jigsaw pieces, you can see the domino effect. And so when you are in a place of privilege, right? And you were mentioning about privilege. So MPs, when they are in parliament, they have what you call the privilege of parliament freedom of speech, that they can't be prosecuted for certain things they say. And so when there's a lack of responsibility, you say things and you don't really care about the effect of it. And that's why Islam always teaches us that, mind your tongue, because your words have effect. It's not just waves in the air, sound in the air. No, these are things that will have a tangible effect. And we see that with the MPs, that sometimes they are ignorant of that. And sometimes maybe purposely, ignorant that my words will have an effect. And there's so many other examples, famously Boris Johnson, again, prime minister, ex-prime minister, and he's calling Muslim women letterboxes. And it's outrageous. You imagine saying that about another community, another group of, religious group. And then you have Nigel Farage. There's a whole long list to select of, statements he's made. He's called Muslims a fifth column. He said that, there's areas in the UK where non-Muslims are not welcome. They're Muslim ghettos. And his comments have been repeated on Fox News in America. And the Americans are sitting over there thinking, Birmingham is like a no-go zone. And you go to Birmingham and you realize there's no no-go zone here, right? So there's incredible claims that these MPs are definitely making, these politicians are making. And for us as Muslims, it's so important that we basically, hold them to account, right? And inshallah, we are going to be discussing how. And another claim I think that is worth mentioning, because it is these exact type of statements which create this anger, right? Is where on an LBC radio show, he argued, Nigel Farage, that many of the values that are associated with Islam, they're not compatible with Western culture. And so you can just imagine a British person, white person, for example, born and bred here, listening to that and thinking, well, if they're not compatible, these people can never integrate. And if they can't integrate, well, we need to get rid of them, right? There's too much immigration happening. We need to stop this because these people cannot integrate. And so straight away, that's what's being presented. And so that makes it we're already fighting a losing battle, basically. We're fighting a losing battle.
So you see, this is the problem. You see, you have people who are in positions of power and they're making statements like this. And obviously, this is being repeated on different news channels,
platforms, yeah.
on different platforms, on newspapers, in different ways.
Yeah.
And then you have people who quote them as well. You have comedians who use their quote in a mock-up, in a stand-up or something. They'll say, so what happens? It's constant, and it's being fed to the people in a way whereby they don't even know they're being brainwashed, in essence, thinking that this is what Muslims are and this is how Muslims are, whereas Muslims aren't like this. This is a completely complete misportrayal of who Muslims are and how Islam actually is. Islam itself is a religion of peace. It teaches nothing like this. And this is the problem, when we see, and then they make comments like, and they say that we need stronger integration policies because they think Islam is incapable or incompatible to them, to their modern Western ideologies. Whereas in fact, Islam is not that. In fact, Islam offers you a better way. All right. It doesn't want to change your way, but it wants to offer you a better way of living.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's something we need to understand.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's something that we kind of need to dissect a bit more, inshallah, perhaps a bit later. That this idea of, integrate, they're not integrating, what does that actually mean? Not being compatible with British values, what values do they want us to adopt? Inshallah, I think that will come. But, we were mentioning how these are not just words, these have an effect. And we saw this, incredibly scary, video. And I showed you that video as well. And I think, your reaction at that time was one of pure shock. When I showed you this video at the time that these riots were taking place, that there was a Muslim he was sitting in his car at a petrol station, and a man, a white man basically, he comes out of the petrol station, he looks at them, and then he suddenly starts running to his Jeep or something, which is at the back, another car at the back. He runs and the camera pans to the back, and you're thinking, what's going to happen, right? And next thing you know, he pulls out a chainsaw and he starts running towards the car. And you're thinking, this is like a scene from like some kind of action movie or something. Like, what is going on? This can't be real. And just in the last moment, the car drives off and they save themselves, alhamdulillah. But you kind of just worry that, it could have been me. It could have been one of my family members. It could have been us in that position, right? And so it doesn't take much to take an innocent person's life. And so we really have to think before we speak. And when people are in positions of authority, we have to hold them to account. Apart from the chainsaw attack, you have attacks on masjids, right? That was common, and then you also there was claims that a Muslim woman in Middlesbrough was attacked with acid. I mean, this is cowardly things to do, but these are things that are taking place, and so that's why this is such an important topic to discuss.
Yeah, and this has, I think sometimes people fail to understand the actual ripple effect it's having on the mass community, just because they want to, like I said, just because they want to gain position and power, they want to be the next party in power or the next person to be elected for. They say certain things that at that time may get them the vote, without caring for what effect it will have.
Yeah.
So you see in France, this exactly happened, right? And you see this in politics, you have this big shift of left becoming a bit more centralized and bit more, whether it's actually left or not is questionable. And likewise, right is what's happening to that. And it's a big shift in politics, right? So likewise in France, we see that there's obviously a particular party in power. And because of again, same thing, constantly demonizing Muslims, right? Constantly making out like Muslims are the problem.
Yep.
So what happens is a far-right party, they are going to obviously have a field day here now.
Uh-huh.
So they are like, all their policies and everything they're pushing towards is obviously, in essence, getting rid of Muslims from the country. And obviously the public, because they think Muslims are the demons, Muslims are the problem. And there's a party that are saying they're going to wipe them away from here. They're going to get rid of them. They're going to deport them. They're going to do this. They're going to do that, and whatever other promises that were made. So obviously many people were now thinking we should vote for them. So they started picking up momentum to the extent that the polls were saying that if they actually had the elections at the election time when it was meant to happen, they probably would have picked up enough momentum to have won. But what the government at the time, what they cleverly did was they called for the election earlier, and they didn't give them enough time to be able to pick up that momentum.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it would have been scary times, you would see. So they just about narrowly, just about won. The far-right party didn't win. But you see, this is the kind of things that's going to happen eventually, isn't it? And we see that in this country as well, that you see the far-right parties are picking up momentum. They're gaining more votes.
Definitely.
They're becoming much more popular. And you will have certain parties who are completely, they were like, because of certain criminal activities that there may be party members and people did, that's why people are not going to vote for them, because they're like completely outright. So what they simply did was rebrand come up with a new party with a new name and slightly subtle way of showing their far rightness, you can say. And they're obviously gaining popularity. So this is something that we need to think about.
Yeah. And I mean, just to add on here that, you were mentioning about how politicians, they are saying certain things to kind of get the popular vote, kind of to bring in their circle of voters. And this actually brings to mind something I was reading recently. So, Mufti Taqi Usmani, who's one of the great scholars of our time, he's written a book called Islam and Politics. And so just a few weeks ago, I was just, reading through that book. And in one section, he was discussing the idea of democracy and how some aspects of democracy may not entirely be compatible with Islam. And one particular aspect, based on how the political system works today, he was mentioning was that today people are put themselves forward to be leaders. That, okay, make me the leader and I will do this and this and this. And so if you want to become the leader, you have to put yourself forward and then you have to get people to vote for you. You have to campaign, you have to lobby, you have to fundraise, etc., etc. Now, obviously, in doing this, it can get quite fierce. And to become that leader, you will say what you need to get that seat, right? But Islam teaches us that if you try to claim a leadership position, then you won't be supported. You'll be left to that position. Allah will leave you. Okay, you wanted it, deal with it. But if other people put you in that position, then you will have the support of Allah, right? And we see the wisdom behind this method. Because as soon as you put yourself forward, these are my skills. This is why I should be leader. There's a big, and you start to say certain things. Whereas if other people are putting you forward because they see you as competent, straight away you have the support of the community. So you can see that how Islam, even in these simple things, has solutions that we should, be thinking about.
Definitely, that makes sense, yeah. So what are other solutions you can say in terms of what we're dealing with, what we're looking at?
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, we focused on, the things that MPs are saying and doing. And our role as Muslims in this, and as, decent human beings who care about, the safety of society, of, harmony in society, is that we need to hold the media and politicians to account. And this is something, unfortunately, in the Muslim community, we belittle this. We just think, it's nothing, it's not going to have an effect. But subhanAllah, it actually has a significant impact. We think about, our cousin brothers and the way they lobby and the way they, hold the media to account. If they see something which they think is biased, they will write in and complain, right? And that because of the system that we have here, right, and in Western countries, those complaints have to be taken into account. When a politician says something that they think is not right, they will say, oh, this is anti so-and-so, right? So we should not belittle this, and we have to do our part, right? And that means, writing to your MP. It means, right, if you've seen something in the media which is not correct, writing to the media regulator, to the regulatory body, signing petitions when these petitions come. These things are all small activities. But this is one of the modern ways of defending Islam. Today we think, especially men, that we can't defend Islam. But no, there are ways we can all defend Islam. We can defend Islam from the comfort of our home now, which is by writing to your MP, by signing a certain petition, by complaining to the regulatory body, etc., etc. And this, inshallah, you will be rewarded for. When you do it with that intention of i'la'u kalimatillah, of defending the deen, defending, Allah and Rasul, then inshallah you will have a reward for this. And when we look at people, a lot of people, they think that, I'm busy. I haven't got time for this. I've got to, go work, look after my family. I've got so many things to do. Who's got time to, complain about every article that's, wrong? They're never going to stop. But we have to remember that the ulama, they say, and this is actually a hadith, that Allah fi awni al-abd ma kana al-abdu fi awni akhi. That when we look out for our fellow Muslim brothers and humanity, right, widely, then Allah will look after our needs. And we see there's so many examples of ulama as well, which I'm sure you can give examples of as well, Muhtasab, where they spent their time looking after the needs of the ummah, crying for the ummah. Their whole focus was on the ummah, and Allah looked after their families, right? So we have to have this greater concern, because this is about, our future generations as well.
Definitely. This point that you mentioned about holding politicians or media to account, or even any other body that is doing the aggression to account. through the procedures that there are. Because in this country, alhamdulillah, we have procedure, we have, regulatory bodies and things. So it's very important that we take advantage of that. I myself personally, there was a time when I was a little skeptical as to whether this actually makes a difference. People used to say, write this, people used to say, send out this alert.
Or protest.
Protest, or, send this alert, send this message, copy and paste it, change it a bit and send it to MP and all of that. And I used to think that sometimes, like, is it a waste of time? Is it something that's going to actually make a difference? But I remember the first time I wrote to an MP, I actually received a reply written properly, on a piece of paper, and it was really good quality paper as well. And I was thinking, mashallah, that you actually receive a reply, right? And it wasn't just a generic reply, because I didn't send a generic email. So I received a proper reply, and I felt that something has happened here, right? It makes us, and then obviously when everybody when Palestine and everything happens, and there was mass marching, mass protesting that was taking place, the effect that it was taking, the heat that the governments were feeling was immense. Yeah. You had other governments from other countries telling the government of this country that you need to calm down your people in your country, right? The protests are too much, because this is being aired in different countries, and this is going to start off, protests, and it did start off protests in different countries. So you see that it created a lot of it sends waves, that's not just little ripple effect, it sends waves, the bigger the protest it becomes. And obviously we have to avail of these, ways of holding people to account. So we have to do this. If we don't do that, then I'm afraid we're going to be the ones that are lost. And not only we, the biggest danger is, we may not feel it in our lifetime, but it's our children. It's the grandchildren that we have to look after. You see, now you have in a playground, a youngster doesn't want to be called a Muslim name, right? They want to be called a short, abbreviated or nickname that is not Muslim, and they don't want to look a Muslim. They want to style their hair out and make themselves look like a non-Muslim. Why? Because they fear that if they are looking like a Muslim, they'll be bullied, they'll be picked on. So this is something that we need to look at, because then you're taking away that Islamic identity from your children. They don't want to be known as a Muslim, right? So that's the last thing that we want, that kind of danger that our children think and feel. So this is important that we look after this, and a lot of times what happens here is that what we need to balance this with is that we have obviously a push towards, a lot of people pushing towards, this, becoming a bit more active, politically active, like you say. Yeah. So this is something that we're pushing towards. But those who are politically active shouldn't become despondent and negative. That nobody does this, nobody does that, because you hear this a lot. And because the amount of people that actually are politically active, especially amongst us Muslims, are few, are not too many. So what happens with this few and too many? They constantly complain. So when I go to talk to them, how's things going? Nobody helps us. The protest, this happened. We sent this out and nobody helped us. The scholars didn't help us. They didn't sign this. They didn't do that. It's constant complaints, negative outlook. What happens? The problem with this is that when you constantly look at things negatively, eventually what will happen is you're going to stop doing this. Why? Because you become a person that looks at outcomes, because you're looking at, nobody did this, that's why this outcome didn't take place. What we have to understand as Muslims is that we can make all the effort we want. But if Allah doesn't want something to happen, it won't happen that way.
Definitely.
And you can make the smallest of effort. You could be one person, right? And Allah wants that to happen, inshallah, you will feel the outcome and effort of it. I mean, you see so many people, so many books written by one scholar, and that one scholar that wrote that one book, and the acceptance that Allah gave it, that masses of people across the Muslim world are reading these books.
Definitely.
So you see, this is the point. The point is that Allah will take work from you. Remember this. If you are doing it sincerely for the sake of Allah, continue doing it for the sake of Allah. If people join you, you try to encourage them to join you in a positive way. If they join you, they join you. If they don't join you, don't complain. Because at the end of the day, you have to raise your hands in front of Allah. At night time, make dua. Allah will accept the efforts that you make. The little you do, Allah will compound it, make it something amazing, inshallah. If we keep complaining, the point is that, remember, this complaints, that attitude of complaint is from shaitan.
Yeah.
The shaitan is the one who will constantly make you look at the outcome. You're not gaining the outcome. So what happens is, you will see that shaitan, he makes a useful person useless.
SubhanAllah.
And I've seen this. So many useful people that you were doing this particular thing, and you ask them after a few years, I'm not doing that anymore. And like, why aren't you doing it anymore? Oh, it's a waste of time. I didn't gain. Because we can see that they didn't gain, but they were a very, very useful person. For the ummah, they would have been a great asset.
Definitely, yeah.
But they obviously fall into this trap of shaitan. So it's very important that we realize that at the end of the day, the effort comes from us. Whether that effort is successful or not, the result of it is down to Allah Ta'ala.
Yeah.
We have to lead that to Allah. So we focus on this.
Yeah.
And like the Anbiya alayhi salatu wasalam, they did. One person, they came and they changed communities. And so many times, so many of them, unfortunately, weren't able to change the whole community. They had to migrate, they had to move away and things. So they didn't stop, they continued. Positive message. And many ulama, many scholars of ours have done the same. You look at the work of Tabligh, for example, right?
Yeah.
Mu'adh Ilyas, one person starts this off, and he carried on, made the effort. And today, what do we see? We see that the work that he started off is now obviously carried through into so many people, millions of people who understand this work, who are doing the work, the work of Tabligh, which has been the means of saving iman of so many people. And Islam spreading in so many countries, and Muslims becoming more revived and energized to actually, abide by the laws of Islam. So becoming Muslims. So this is, there's so many examples of this we can give of scholars who have done this.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that what you mentioned, that principle just needs to be highlighted. That upon us is to make the effort, upon Allah is the result. I think as long as we have that and we kind of understand that and we absorb that message, then inshallah we will keep on making effort and we won't become despondent. As human beings, naturally you become despondent. When you do a sin, you become despondent. Shaitan tries to make you despondent. But we know the mercy of Allah is always open. Allah is there to support us. So we need to have that in our minds and keep working towards our goal. And also what you see historically as well is that initially when something starts off, it starts off small, like a snowball. It starts off small, but it slowly picks up speed. So sometimes in our lives, we may not see the fruits of what we're doing. You may plant the seed and it may be a generation, 2-3 generations before that tree grows and before somebody is benefiting from the fruits and sitting under the shade, right? But historically, all these major projects, major movements, they all started off local. And the person who started it off didn't think, it's going to be global one day. But subhanAllah, Allah multiplied their efforts and it became global. So we can have these high hopes, but we have to work at the local level, community level, and keep on working. And connected to that, we have, not giving up hope, because you don't see results straight away. And I think a prime example, because it's going to be so fresh in our minds, is Bangladesh, right? All the Bengali brothers who are going to be listening to this will be rejoicing, right? And, we ourselves, with that little information we know about, Bangladeshi politics, we thought this was never going to end, that Sheikh Hasina, she's going to be there forever and ever and ever until she puts her feet into the grave, right? And even the Bengali brothers who are aware of that politics, I was listening to a podcast and it was a well-known Muslim commentator. And the host asked him that, this situation in Bangladesh, what do you think is going to happen? Do you think the demands that the students are making, are they going to be met? And he said, and I still remember, he said that, I hope so, but in my mind, I don't think so. I don't think it's going to happen. And just literally, I think it was not even a few days, and it was on the news that Sheikh Hasina has resigned and she's fled to India and the students are celebrating. And I remember I went to my local masjid and there's mitai being given out. And I'm thinking, what's this mitai for? It's Bengali. What's this mitai? But you don't ask, you just eat, right? So I took the mitai and he goes, good news. I thought, what's going on? And I went home and it turns out that, Sheikh Hasina, she's basically resigned and they're all very, very happy. Right? And they were happy for Islam, that Islam can now again, flourish in that country. But the point was, we sometimes don't see that build-up of pressure. It's like you have a pressure cooker and the pressure is building up, and soon it will have an effect and it will make an impact. So we have to keep trying, keep persevering. We have to know that success doesn't come overnight. And even when we look back to our primary sources, we look back to the Quran and Sunnah, right? The Quran has the story of Bani Israel. And their mention is made again and again and again. And we know they spent years in slavery under Fir'aun, right? And then eventually they escaped. And when they had hope and they thought something's going to happen, next thing you know, they're suddenly stuck between the sea and the army, right? So they're seeing hope, and then at that exact moment, they're now stuck. And in front of them, they have the sea, and behind them, they have, the army of Fir'aun. And they're thinking, this is the end. And at that most difficult moment, most dark moment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala opens up the way miraculously, and they escape, and they're saved. But there's a saying that the night is darkest before the dawn. And so sometimes when these riots take place and we can become gloomy and dark, we have to see the light at the end of the tunnel. That we keep on making effort, and inshallah, who knows the goodness that will come out of this. And we already see, I watched a video of a person just after these riots, and he's becoming Muslim. And he's saying, I've seen that this is the truth. So there is a goodness that comes out of this as well. And as Muslims, we are people, who see the good in everything that takes place. So what are some other, root issues or roots to this issue?
Yeah, so other things that we have to look at as well is something that we were maybe touching on a little bit as well, is that there's this fear amongst the many native Brits that their way of life is being changed, their culture is being stolen, and also that there's also obviously a group of people, minority you may say, that may be racist, and these are all in the mix, playing a part in leading to these kind of events that are taking place. So as Muslims, we know obviously, and as is something that obviously the masses should know, that Muslims contribute to this country, right? Not only in terms of, let's look at financially, right? Muslims are statistics show that Muslims contribute 31 billion to the UK economy, right? And that's not a minor amount. That's a lot of, this is Muslim contribution. And obviously we as Muslims, we will continue contributing, right? We continue to do so because we live in this country and we avail of all of the benefits that are in this country. In terms of, we see Muslims, they contribute in terms of, you have so many Muslim doctors, you have Muslims working in NHS as you say 26% of the NHS doctors are Asian, and obviously a lot of them will be Muslim, although there will be others as well. But that's just to show in terms of statistic, because we had no other statistic to go by where it's recorded how many are Muslim. But we see this, we see in schooling how many teachers are Muslim. We see head teachers, and very well accomplished head teachers. Definitely. Who are head teachers of their particular schools, colleges, and so on. You have so this is something that we see.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, just to mention about head teachers, right? So one example we see in our home borough of Newham, right? So within Newham, you have the Newham Collegiate Sixth Form. And this was actually founded by a Muslim brother by the name of Muhsin Ismail. And Muhsin Ismail, he was actually a solicitor. And when he saw that in this borough, you have a lot of people who are disadvantaged, he thought, how can I raise these people up and give them the best opportunity to succeed, right? And so he found this college, and subhanallah, in 2017, right, some of the stats we have, the school managed to send 95% of its pupils to top universities, right? Despite being based in one of London's most disadvantaged areas. And to this day, this school, NCS, is one of the most in-demand schools amongst, GCSE students looking to do their A-levels. Because they know that if I go here, they're going to push me. They're going to make me work hard, right? And I know people who went there and they would mention that, they really make you work hard. But ultimately, it's going to open up the paths for me, open up the doors for me. And so you see somebody like this who's helping disadvantaged people, raising the level of society. And these people in the future will be the doctors, the engineers, the leaders, the contributors, the innovators of the future. Right? So even at this grassroots level, Muslims like this is just one amongst many examples who are forgotten. Yeah. So Muslims are making a positive impact, and this is something our deen teaches us. It's not despite of our deen or in spite of our deen, it is because of our deen. And if you ask Muhsin Ismail, he will say the same thing. That because of our deen, we are making this effort and contributing in this way.
Definitely. You see the charity sector as well. charity sector is flooded with Muslims. Yeah, so many Muslim charities that are doing so much aid work, not only in this country, but you have across the world doing aid work. So you see that, and you see restaurants, for example, right? In this country, you see so many restaurants are owned by Muslims and are very, very good food. And obviously, everyone loves to eat good food, right?
100%.
They enjoy good food, right? So this is another contribution that Muslims are giving to the community. But you got so many things that we can talk about how Muslims are contributing.
Yeah,
so you have to look at all of the positives here, rather than trying to highlight the minute, small things and try to make propaganda about.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, just talking about food, because I think we're all foodies here, right? That, like when you go to another country, sometimes you'll see that, okay, there's only one or two cuisines available there. And then when you come back to London, you feel so much gratitude that, subhanAllah, at my doorstep, I have the whole world. If I want to have Chinese, if I want to have an Indian, if I want to eat something Italian, everything is available. And this is the benefit of cultural integration, of being a multicultural society. You get the best of all the people. And I think that's what British society needs to work on. That how do we get the best of all these different people and work together to have a cohesive, harmonious society?
So yeah, how would you suggest that we go about in changing the narrative of the people that have this brainwashing done of them?
Yeah, subhanAllah. There's nothing better, we were talking about food, than sharing a plate of food, right? If you've made some really nice curry, not too spicy, then you have a white neighbor, call him over. Say, I've made some curry, right? Come share with me, right? And over that, break some bread and just talk. And they will realize that this person is just like me. They have the same daily worries as me. They haven't got some big mega plan going on of taking over society and, making us some kind of slaves or concubines or something crazy like that, right? Nobody's got that in their mind. We have daily worries that you guys have. We're thinking about where shall we send our children to school? We're thinking about what things have I got on for work today? We're thinking about spending time with our family. We're thinking about where we're going to go next for holiday. We're thinking about what time's the next salah, right? So these are all concerns that we all share. These are all mutual concerns, maybe besides the last one, but they're all mutual concerns, right? So as Muslims, we need to work on breaking down barriers with non-Muslims. Right? Alhamdulillah, we do that within Muslims. When we come to the masjid, we socialize. Amazing. Jumu'ah, socialize. But now, if you are somebody who's in a area, neighborhood, where you have non-Muslims, then you can no longer live isolated. We have to start to share and spread our Islam, right? Because that's what Islam is for. We are offering this amazing way of life. We're not forcing anybody, la ikraha fid din, but we're offering it to them. This is a nice plate of biryani, come try. This is an amazing way of life, come try. So we need to break barriers, and Islam has ways. So Islam tells us, for example, that, share food with your neighbors. If you've made some curry at home and you're not sure if your neighbor's hungry, add some extra water, share it with your neighbor. These are beautiful qualities. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam himself, a hadith in Musnad Ahmad tells us that a Jewish man invited the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam to a meal of barley bread and some meat. And the Prophet accepted his invitation. He didn't say, oh, this guy's not a Muslim. I'm not going to go to his house. No. The Prophet accepted his invitation. So we can see that there's nothing in Islam which is against having good relations with your neighbor, with your non-Muslim, right? Rather, we have to understand that this is an ummah as well. And this is the ummah to da'wah, the ummah that we need to give da'wah to. And the best da'wah, is the da'wah that we do through our actions rather than through our words, right? And there's a wisdom behind that, isn't it? That why is it that the best da'wah is through your actions than your words?
So you see that obviously actions speak louder than words. That's obvious, right? So there's so many incidents of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, how through his actions, through what he did, it changed a whole community, right? Without having to even verbally go there, or to go there and actually verbally give some sort of da'wah, some sort of propagation towards accepting Islam or anything. So a very famous incident. I'm not going to go into the whole incident, but it's a very lengthy incident. But there was an occasion in which Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he treated a woman who had been the means of gaining water, right? And Prophet ﷺ treated her so well that eventually when she goes back to her community and she sees that the Muslims, how they are treating that community, their village. Eventually, she asks her community, should we become Muslim? Because this is the way that Muslims are treating us, even though we're not Muslim. So they all accepted Islam in one go.
Yeah.
So imagine, this is just upon the treatment, one single occasion in which she met Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the way that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Sahaba radiallahu anhum honored her, treated her, not like bandits, not like, left her for stranded, taken her animal, taken her goods or anything like that. Treated her as a human being, and showed her what Muslims are and who Muslims are.
Definitely.
And from that, a whole village of them accepted Islam. So this is what we're talking about.
Yeah. And I mean, so we mentioned about, sharing food. Then Islam teaches us visit the sick, right? It's not visit the sick when they are Muslim, right? Visit the sick. And there's so many stories. There was the story comes to mind of an old person, non-Muslim, and he was in the hospital bed. And only one Muslim, one guy used to come and visit him regularly. And eventually the guy, he just thought, you don't even know me. Why are you coming to visit me? Like, my own family don't come to see me. Why are you coming to see me? And when he learned that this was because of this person's Islam, he said, well, if that's what Islam teaches you, then I want to be part of this, right? So these things, simple things that we take for granted, sharing food, visiting the sick, being there to help people. Right now you have a cost of living crisis. Just looking out, being aware. Does my neighbor, does somebody in my community need something? And over the last month or so, I spent a day and I was reading this book, which I was gifted by some students. And this book, it's called Al-Barnamaj Al-Kamil. And it's a complete day fi hayat al-Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And what the author does is go through the day of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, right? From morning to night. And what kind of stood out to me was how much time Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam had in his day for others. So, for example, after Ishraq prayer, he would ask, is anybody ill? Let's go visit them. Is there a janazah? Let's do that. Sometimes after Dhuhr Salah also, he would do these things. So his concern for the community was there. And if we share that concern for the Muslims and non-Muslims, then this will have, a massive impact, right? And obviously connected to that, is showing our akhlaq. So do you maybe have some incidents where you think, just showing akhlaq even today can have massive impact?
Definitely. Like so many times I mentioned this one particular incident just to show you, like, before I used to work with my brother, and I used to, when I used to go for Jumu'ah a bit further north London, then along the way there was a shop that he used to buy stock from.
Right.
So he would tell me that on your way back from Jumu'ah, just pay a visit there, pick up some stock for me and come back. So I used to, because it's on my way, I used to go to the shop every Friday, I used to go. So obviously after Jumu'ah, I used to go, and obviously dressed up for Jumu'ah, and I would just go. Now by that time I had been going there for almost probably around about 2 years now.
Okay.
So built a good relationship with this person, this businesswoman. So she was a old Greek woman. She would be there. She'd all be serving always, every day. She'd be serving. And she'd, chit chat. She would chat. Mashallah, whilst the things were being prepared. And one day, this is probably after about 1.5 to 2 years after I known her, she says that, what, you've come to visit me every single week, and every week you're always smiling. Whenever you come in, you're smiling. You're always smiling. And I have other customers that come. Sometimes they're moody, they're grumpy. Sometimes they're smiling, and it's very hard to even get a conversation out of them sometimes. And they always say complaint here and there or whatever else.
Yeah.
Sometimes they may be in a good mood. So how come? What is it that you're always smiling? You never think. I said, that's what my religion teaches me. That's my religion makes me feel. So he says, you're a man of, because I used to dress in my Jumu'ah libas, obviously, but the way that I used to lead Jumu'ah, obviously. So he used to say that you're a man of religion, and I see that a man of religion is very content and happy in life.
Subhanallah.
So it made her inquisitive regarding what Islam was, and she wanted to know further. Amazing. So she was interested in Islam and everything. But you see an old person like that, it's just the smallest thing, which is that she sees that this person's constantly smiling and always happy in life. I want to be like that.
Yeah, definitely.
So I didn't even know that this is something that is creating in her head because of me smiling. But this is what Islam teaches us, isn't it? Right? Allah Ta'ala, Prophet, he teaches us these things. So the idea is that, you treat other people in a way whereby our Islam teaches us. And if you do that, then 100% all the stigma and everything will go away. Mm-hmm. Because That's what Islam teaches us, right?
Definitely.
It teaches us what? It teaches us not to stoop to the level of the people that are treating you in a bad way, right? Allah Ta'ala, in the Quran, Allah Ta'ala mentions, idfa' billati hiya ahsan. فإذا الذي بينك وبينه عداوة كأنه ولي حميم.
Subhanallah, such a
Amazing,
nice ayah,
right?
yeah.
And it fits so well, right? In anything, any part of your life, if you think about it. And at this particular time, you see that Allah is saying that, repel that which through, you do that which is good. Do that which is good towards the people and repel the evil in that way. Why? Because when you see that there is an enmity between you and this person, by behaving in a good way towards that person, what's going to happen? That enmity will slowly turn into close bond and friendship, right? And you would see that it completely changes the way that this person behaves towards you, is because they see you treating them in a good way. Yeah. Same thing with neighbors. A lot of times people say, oh, my neighbor's no good though, I don't get on with them, right? My neighbors always but treat them good. Be good towards them. Eventually they will start to become good towards you. And that will happen. Yeah. And I've seen that happen. I've actually experienced that with a few friends of mine. And they used to, eventually, when they initially moved in, let's like 20 years ago, they used to be, because it's predominantly non-Muslim area, there would be racism, there would be things thrown into their letterbox and things like that, right? But they continued behaving in a good way towards them. Now they have a very good relationship. They go out, and when they go out to the front door, they see him, oh, hello, how are you? Everything okay? And just general chit-chat. Why? Because they realize that this Muslim is not what the media have propagated.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's what it is, that there's a type of fear of the unknown. Because, you see somebody, you don't really know them, they look slightly different to you, maybe slightly different skin color, culture is different, they eat different. And so naturally as human beings, we're scared of the unknown. You're scared of the dark, like what's going on, right? So all we have to do is try to break those barriers of the unknown and show that you can know us, we're just like you. So definitely that makes a big difference.
Definitely. And as Muslims, we have to live up to who we are. That's very important. We have to live up to, we're Muslims, and we have to live up to that Islam of ours. So as we've already talked about how we contribute to society in terms of what we do, and in terms of neighbors, how we look after them, in terms of visiting the sick, all of that, right? But also with that, we have a sense of keeping the areas clean, tidy. Muslim areas should be the cleanest. Unfortunately, you go to some Muslim areas, predominant Muslim areas, and it smells so bad, and it's not tidy, it's dirty, it doesn't look like how a Muslim should be looking like. But you look at other areas, like obviously there are examples of this. Like you go to UAE, for example, right? You go to Qatar, you go to different countries like this, Muslim countries, and you'd go there, it's clean. It looks so nice. You feel like staying there, right? You got so many non-Muslims even going there to on tourism, taking their holidays there and things like this. Besides everything else there, but it's like, it's the cleanliness there, it's the purity there, all of that. That's what Muslim areas should be like. So this is something that we need to show as well. That you come to a Muslim area, you will find them the cleanest. Mm-hmm. You will find them the safest, not just clean, but also safe in terms of the safety that's being, that is there in the Muslim areas as well.
Yeah, 100%. Now, obviously we've been discussing, roots of this issue, and also some lessons that we can take. Now, another lesson that I think is very, very important for us to extract from this whole incident is that as Muslims, we are united. And this is so important because with this, with these riots or these protests which took place, there were, reports going round that there was, Zionist backing behind these riots, especially behind certain people. They had Zionist funding, who then these people then instigated or fanned the flames of the riots. And their whole aim was to try and demonize Muslims. And perhaps, these people are saying that it may be because the Muslims were supporting Palestine so vociferously and so fearlessly. And so to attack the Muslims, they spread these rumors. Now, as Muslims, obviously we can try to defend ourselves through, repelling these rumors, etc., etc. But what's most important is that we within ourselves have a united front. Yeah, and that's why there's a Quranic ayah where Allah says, "Inna Allah yuhibbu alladhina yuqatiluna fi sabilihi saffan ka'annahum bunyanun marsus." That Allah loves those Muslims who they are together, like as if a building, its bricks are together. It's strong. They're supporting each other. So as Muslims, we have to have a united front, and we need to make sure that we don't bicker amongst ourselves. Because clearly now we understand, having lived in this country for so many years, that there's bigger things for us to worry about, right? And naturally, as Muslims, with the differences we have of mindset, of understanding, there will be difference of opinions. So how would you suggest, based on the fact that naturally as humans we have different temperaments, different opinions, how can we work together? Is there a mechanism perhaps in Islam itself that we can use to work together and maintain this unity?
Yeah, so this what happened during the writing time and things like this, there were different opinions being given and different guidances that were being given. And rightfully so, obviously everyone's entitled to their opinion. We're not going to dictate what opinion you should be having. But what needs to be understood is that when you have right opinions, correct opinions being given, especially from people who are learned, people who understand how to go about it. They're the scholars either, or they're the people who are learning in this particular area. They don't know how to deal with this particular incident that's taking place. Like, for example, the writing that was happening. So how do we go about? What do we do? So there were some people saying that, we're going to stand in front of the masjids and we're going to defend. Some people saying that, we're going to stand in front of the masjid, we're going to invite people in and we're going to give them tea. Different approaches you saw. But what's very important, that in one community, in that one single community, let's say, for example, in that one masjid, there needs to be unity, like you said. We need to have a united front to show that we are all one. And despite your personal opinions being different, you need to show that unity. And that happens through mashwara. That showing that unity is very powerful, very, very powerful. Just to give you an example of this, I have some twigs here, yeah? So just to give you an example, this twig here, this one twig here, if you have this one single, this represents you, single person, having your own opinion. If you have your opinion, then obviously this one twig, if you just very easy to snap it, yes? Very easy to snap. But if you take a bunch of them, if you take a bunch of these twigs, yeah, put them all together and you try snapping them. I'm trying my best, right? I can't break them. So this is the example of what unity. The example of unity where you have multiple people come together on one opinion, despite it not being their personal opinion. But because, like we explained, this concept of mashwara we have, right? Which is that we sit and we consult each other. In that consultation, we make a person, a amir, we make a person, the best person suited to make this decision. Is this person so we sit together, for example, however many people we have, and we appoint somebody as the leader, that you're going to lead us in this particular consultation that we're having here, because you're maybe the most suited for this particular. It doesn't have to be the eldest or whoever it is, but the person who is best suited. People come together, okay, this person's our leader. Now this person will take on board different opinions that people are giving, and then come to a decision that this is the decision that we're going to take. Once the decision is taken, everyone must unite on this decision. Despite, for example, if I'm sitting there, my opinion, personal opinion is something different, I'm not going to cause a fuss anymore. So this is an example of this is various occasions where you have this obedience being shown by the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum towards Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So you can, I'm sure you can think of examples of this.
Yeah, I mean, one of the Sahaba that we all look up to, Umar radiyallahu anh, and we know he was a strongly opinionated person, right? It's like, he was a man of intellect. People, ulama will know his fiqh and his understanding. And so despite having this strong opinion, right, there's a very famous incident of Hudaybiyah where the Muslims, they went to perform Umrah and they were prevented. And eventually Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he made a truce with the Quraysh, right? And so this truce, part of it was that the Muslims would return back and they would perform Umrah the following year. And so when Umar radiyallahu anh found out, his initial reaction was, he was enraged. And he said that, O Messenger of Allah, aren't we on the truth? And aren't they wrong? Won't our, deceased be going to Jannah and theirs to Jahannam? And he was shocked. How then can we let our religion be degraded and return before Allah has settled the matter between us? Right? How can this happen? And so Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam responded and he said, Oh Ibn al-Khattab, there's no doubt I am Allah's messenger and Allah will never neglect me. Right? And so Umar, he leaves angrily, and then he goes to Abu Bakr and he says the same thing to Abu Bakr. And Abu Bakr again says that don't worry, he is the messenger of Allah and Allah will never neglect him. And so Umar radiallahu anh, he understands and he gives up his own personal opinion for the sake of the unity of the Muslims and following the agreed upon opinion. And we know that then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals the first verse of Surah Al-Fath, that إِنَّا فَتَحْنَا لَكَ فَتْحًا مُبِينًا. We've given you this incredible victory, this clear victory. And what was that? Because this truce took place, right? Because the truce took place, therefore, many people were now able to come and learn about Islam, and huge numbers, throngs of people eventually accepted Islam, and it also then led to the conquest of Mecca as well. And then we have other incidents like the Badr incident as well, where the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam took mashwara, as you were mentioning. And the result of that mashwara was, there was two opinions. One was that the captives, they should be basically executed for their crimes. And the other was they should be ransomed. And Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam followed one of these opinions, right? And so we see here that ultimately in mashwara, you have to follow the agreed upon opinion. And this is the amazing aspect of mashwara, that it teaches us that you sacrifice what you believe for the greater whole, and inshallah in that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will place huge barakah. We have to understand that just because your opinion is not taken, or the one that's chosen, that doesn't mean you're being dishonored. Right? It's not being this, rather you are making a sacrifice for the greater whole. And this is the way to achieve unity, right? In your families, in society, people have to be willing to make sacrifice for the greater whole. Now, are there any other lessons that we can, derive from this incident?
I mean, the obvious one thing that comes to mind also is that we have to, like we're talking about, we have to show Islam is like this universal solution. Mm-hmm. And if we show this is a very big lesson, that we have an opportunity to show our Islam being the universal solution to any problem and any way of life, and that Islam is a progressive way of life, not a life that hinders a person from progression in life. So it's an enhanced way of life, not to necessarily degrade your way of life and to change your way of life for the worse, but to change your way of life for the better.
And I just want to add here, I think what really requires clarification is that Islam will not come and destroy your culture. No, we've seen throughout history that Islam came and assimilated with that culture. It merged with that culture and it formed a beautiful new culture. So your culture will be there. Islam will not take away British culture, no. Right? The noble parts of British culture will always be maintained, but Islam will add a certain level of beauty to that culture as well, right? And this, again, anybody who studies history, can see this wherever Islam has gone, whether Africa or Asia or Europe, Islam has done this. And the remnants of these cultures, we still go to today to see them. People still go to southern Spain to see. People still go to, other parts of the Muslim world to see the effect of Islamic culture. Now, the last aspect I think that we should discuss, and it's because sometimes people say this, is that you Muslims, you are not willing to integrate. So either you integrate, and if you're not gonna, then you need to leave, immigrate. So how do we deal with that? If somebody says that to us, or we've heard that, what should our reaction be?
The question is, why is it that we are resorting to just these two options? You're saying integrate or immigrate. Is that the only two options, I say? Is it not that you have seen that the migrants have come into this country and contributed to this country? They were the ones who were sought for. They came because they were needed for working and the rest of it, right? For labor. And, we have to accept the diversity that will then bring, because if you want people to come to the country to better the economy, they're going to have to accept that diversity that they bring, their culture and everything else that they bring along with them, which includes their religion, and which includes the way they dress, the way they look, the way they talk, and everything else that comes along with it. And this enhances the community, doesn't it? This actually adds more flavor, like we were talking about earlier. So, if you're talking about integrate, if you're talking about integrating, meaning contribute to our society, not that change and become us. That's not what you're talking about here. Clearly, it can't be that you're talking about. So integrate means contribute to our society. Yeah, don't cause harm to us. Don't cause harm to our community. Better us, better our community. Then this is something that we're completely and utterly doing. Mm-hmm. We're already doing that. It's just that because, like we said, these are things that are not shown in mass media and things, and other things are shown, negative things are shown, and that's why these things are highlighted. So it's we are more than happy, and we are currently doing this, and It's just like the level of integration we have to look at, right? The point is that we have to be accepted as who we are, and with our morals, with our religion, with our culture, to come into society and to bring that difference in the community.
Yeah, and I think what we can end on then, inshallah, is that especially for our non-Muslim listeners, that the media has a lot of things to say, but there's nothing better than you yourself studying. And we have, a famous Nobel Prize winning Irish playwright, George Bernard Shaw, right? Very, very well known. And he himself, he did this. And he said that I have very carefully studied Islam and the life of its prophet, meaning Muhammad. I have done so both as a student of history and as a critic. And I have come to the conclusion that Muhammad was indeed a great man and a deliverer and benefactor of mankind, which was till then writhing under the most agonizing pain. If a man like Muhammad were to assume the dictatorship of the modern world, he would succeed in solving its problems that would bring it the much needed peace and happiness. And so we'll end on this message, inshallah, that learn about the life of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam if you want to see true Islam and how Islam can benefit society. And inshallah, until next time, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.